more good.
Absolutely stoked to be welcoming
Drink better.
Ryan Oliver to this week's episode of More Good Drinks. Firstly, because, I lean into my own observation here, but you are somebody who, you're not a necessarily gregarious, bold hospitality personality in the way that some people might expect. When you walk into the door of Panacea, your greeting's always warm, it's always friendly, but it's also gentle. And, I feel like I've spent months, years wanting to dig behind the surface and understand more about who you are. And this is the opportunity, and I'm really excited for it. So thanks so much for taking some time to join us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me on.
Where I always love to start these stories is by giving you the chance to really just tell a little bit of your own story and how you made your way into hospitality, into cocktail bartending in particular, and at Panacea, which is where you are now, and where you happen to pick up a shiny little Lewishams trophy. Tell me a little bit about your start and where you come from and what it is that's formed the foundations of who you are.
I started quite late. I was 26 by the time I started hospitality, and I did it because I had tried university, and like a lot of other people in hospitality, it didn't work out. And then I had a string of jobs that I absolutely could not stand, and I held out for as long as humanly possible before I decided that I was just going to do my OE. And I did the usual thing. I went over to England. I lived in London for 2 years, and that was when I picked up a job working at an agency. So we would be hired out to do hospitality jobs, whether that's front of house or back of house, at all sorts of events all over the country. And I did that for 2 years, and I kind of just enjoyed the variety of it to start with, and getting to go to all these really cool places that I never thought I'd get to see from that perspective. Getting to work behind the scenes at the British Museum or the Natural History Museum, or even doing a couple of gigs like Hampton Court Palace and things like that, which was super cool. I'd done a few jobs working as a bartender and a barback at a bunch of music festivals, and I really enjoyed that. Something about that I really enjoyed, especially like once I got to help sort of create the cocktails and design the menus and things like that. And that creative aspect of it was what really drew me in, I think. So I got home and I started as a part-time barback at a restaurant in Potsdam. And then I became a bit of a regular at Deadshot. And of course I got to know the team there, Joey, Ali, Heather, and I never thought I had a shot of working there, but my friend who I'd always go there with was the cocktail bartender at the restaurant. He's like, oh, we'll both apply, we'll both put our names down because they're looking for people. And we did. And unfortunately, he didn't get the job, but I did. So I always felt a little bit bad for that. But Tim is now out of hospitality and happily married, so I think he came out pretty well off anyway.
I mean, if there's ever a place that's going to draw you into the world of cocktails, it's going to be, I think, Deadshot as an introduction, right? Both from a consumer experience and then from a knowledge basis. What was it that you were studying at university that didn't work out for you?
I did a few different things, and I think that contributed to the fact that it didn't work out. I started in chemistry, and then I moved on to genetics for a bit. So after discussing it with my advisor, he was like, oh, it'll just be another 4 years of university after spending 2.5 years deciding what I even wanted to do. So kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I can afford that.
Does forensics hang in the wind as maybe one day you'll swing back around to it?
I wish. I don't think I never got far enough into it. I only got sort of into the 200 level, the second year courses. I would have to go back and probably start again at this point.
Well, nothing's ever really starting again. It's just starting from where you are. But I hear you. I understand what you mean. So from Deadshot to Panacea, walk us through that, because it's quite it's quite an evolution of what feels like deep immersion into a range of hospitality experiences to then end up at Deadshot.
Yeah, I did a lot of very different things before settling on that. And then I learned so much with Ali and Heather. I spent almost 4 years with them. I think big, thanks to COVID and things like that, things were quite tumultuous for a while. And I shot up a lot quicker than I was probably ready for before ending up sort of in charge of caretaker on a day-to-day basis, which it was an experience and I learned a lot, but by the time I was done with that, I needed something else. I no longer really got the creative aspect of it, which is a big part of it for me, alongside the service aspect. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're dealing mostly with people, it's sort of not customers, but like staff and things like that. It was kind of starting to take some of the fun out of it for me. So I
Mm.
actually just took a break. When I left caretaker, didn't have a plan. I actually took a month and a half off doing nothing before Cal and Danny came to me and said, "Do you want a job?"
So, talk to me about the lessons that you learned at
Um,
Caretaker, because
I
it
just like
sounds like some of them are perhaps a little bittersweet.
some of them, but that is mostly to do with sort of learning to manage people
Mm.
and that sort of aspect of the job, which I think probably, I mean, everyone knows, especially if you're kind of thrown into it without any time or training, that it can be a difficult thing to do. But I mean, I don't think I would have anywhere near the cocktail knowledge I do without working there. Like you learn so much that it's almost overwhelming to begin with. And then also the style of service, like Ali and Heather have such an attentive style of service that they want from people. They want you to be able to have conversations with everyone. You want you to be able to like sort of help, like sort of tease out of everyone what they actually want in a
Hmm.
cocktail, because quite often people will sit down and just say I don't know. And then on top of that, you learn to improvise really well when it comes to drinks making, because you are doing a lot of things on the fly, whether you're on the floor or behind the bar. And that sort of, from like a creation cocktail creation point of view, is such a handy skill to have, like being able to put these things together with sort of just without even tasting them, with just sort of knowing like from experience what goes together and what doesn't. And like yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the parts that are fun for you, because you mentioned that it became less fun. Talk to me about the parts that are
the
fun. What is it that actually
I
keeps you engaged?
I enjoy the customer interaction, getting to sit and chat with people and talk to them about what they do enjoy, what they like look for in a drink. I mean, especially now that I'm at Panacea working with whiskey. Like thanks to Ali and Danny, I have a massive love for whiskey these days, which was also new to me just a few years ago. And like being able to sit and chat about like why you like this particular style over this. Like, do you like smoke? Don't you like smoke? What is your like view on it? Like, you can pick so many different things for so many different reasons, and they're all valid depending on what you prefer. And I just like being able to do that. And even just also, like, if you create a drink for someone and you put it down and they say, "This is the best thing I've had all day," it's a kind of always puts a smile on my face knowing that someone is that you can make their day better just from something so, but it feels so small because you do it 100 times a shift. But
To what extent did you learn more about making cocktails, or did you learn more about asking questions from your time in that highly attentive, personalized service model that Danny absolutely executes it at Panacea as well? But
yeah,
but when I think about personalized service, I think about Deadshot and Caretaker and Rocketman.
absolutely. I feel like I probably learnt more about the service aspect of it and kind
Hmm.
of the cocktail side of it. You learn to do that through being able to ask those questions. But like the actual bartending part of it, they've got such a great system and such a great regimen. As long as you can learn the measurements and the layout of the bar, I think just about any bartender could step up and do that. Like that part of it is super crucial, but is also like almost secondary to being able to have that customer interaction, being able to get out of them what they really, really want.
Is there a particular key that you use to unlock customers from that place of, oh, I don't know?
A little bit. Like, I mean, you starting with what, like, if someone's like, oh, I don't know, maybe you start with like, what's your favorite, and then we go backwards from there, or you kind of say, oh, well, what do you like? What are your favorite fruits, or like, do you usually have something dry, or do you have it tall or short, refreshing? Right? It's hard to say because I'm not even really sure I know I'm doing it half the time.
It's
It becomes
become that
second nature a
entrenched.
little bit.
Yeah. So you're at Panacea. It's a different style of drink in terms of the cocktail kitchen and batching, but it's the same focus on do the drinks beforehand, so the focus and emphasis can be on the welcome and the hello. So how does that play out in where you are now?
I mean, obviously it's a little different. You're not asking a whole load of questions anymore. You don't have like a sort of not a script, but the story to go off of. But I guess it's more about becomes more about engaging with the customers a bit more personally, asking, "How's your day going? Where have you been tonight? Is this your first stop? Do you have any other plans today, or is this just like an after work drink to wind down?" Or it becomes a little bit more personal, I think,
Mm.
less about the drinks necessarily.
Hmm. And do you enjoy that? Because I think one of the pieces that makes me so curious about you is that if I was asked to describe you, I would say I can't tell you for certain, but he strikes me as somebody who is a grand observer of life and takes his time before he decides if he wants to participate in it. And which I mean with the utmost of
Yeah.
respect, you know.
No, no, I know.
So how do you find it being in a role where, your job is to make the first move all the time?
I mean, it took a little getting used to, but now it's a lot easier than it was at the beginning. But I, it depends really on the customer. It can be very rewarding if you're like if you get someone who does want to engage, but it also does kind of help you with being able to work out when someone does just want to drink and to sort of sit and read a book, or someone comes in to finish off some paperwork, or they just want to spend some time in their own head. And I can definitely understand that.
Are you the bartender that looks after the people that come in on their own?
We all try to be as best we can, like make sure that they are enjoying their time there, make sure that they are getting what they need, and if they do want to have a conversation, you can spend some time sort of having a little chat, seeing how their day's going. We always get quite a few tourists and people from overseas, so you get a lot of people asking like, what's Auckland hospitality like, and what's New Zealand like in general? How do you feel living here? And it sometimes it can be a struggle getting conversations out of people, but then once some people open up, like it's hard to stop after that.
Do you ever watch and you kind of like play a little Russian roulette on whether or not somebody's going to be a Pandora's box once you open the lid of conversation?
Yeah, I mean, and some people really surprise you. It's just the people you wouldn't expect to all of a sudden be just really engaging in a massive chatterbox. You would have thought, oh, they were going to be a little bit more quiet and reserved, but once you kind of pique their interest, that they're off.
So a vast shift from your time, with Ali and Heather and learning a vast kind of library of cocktails and recipes and formulas around how things go together and patterns and flavors that work together to then the batch kitchen style of things. So how does that play out for you in terms of, creativity, which you talked about before? Creativity and the opportunity to explore and continue exploring flavor and construction of a good drink.
You just have to look at it in a very sort of different way, like because you're no longer doing things all fresh on the spot with like sort of someone's sort of hand guiding you based on what they enjoy. You've got to look at it from I guess, from a much wider point of view, which
Hmm.
is really a really fun thing to do, especially after I spent so much time working within like those formulas. You get to like play around with ingredients you would never think to use, or things that just you've seen the menu that we do, like stuff that you just never expect to put into a cocktail. Getting to use spice blends from all over the world, playing around with like, I mean, Danny's currently got his kangaroo infused cocktail on the menu. I can't think of anyone else who would have attempted that, but he's done it, he's pulled it off, and people really love it.
I'm yet to try that particular delicacy, but I have it on my agenda for an Auckland visit soon. Where do the ideas come from for you that keep you engaged and inspired in the hospitality scene?
From they come from all kinds of places. I have a lot of like YouTube channels I like to follow. Like lots of stuff about like modern mixology and syrup making and infusions and foams and all that kind of stuff. But then also a couple that are all based around sort of like cocktail and culinary history, which I find really interesting. Like
Mm.
you see all kinds of weird things that were so common in the past that don't get used anymore, and I've seen a few that I really want to try and see if I can get them to work, see if
Hmm.
I could make them sort of work in a modern cocktail kitchen. But you never know. I mean, I saw someone describing an 18th century recipe for almond milk made with port, so we'll see. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
I like both those things,
Yeah, but
so that's a good start.
I mean, that's always a good start with is you don't want to pick something. Well, I mean, you can pick something divisive as well, but
I think there's always a danger and a watch out in the way that some of those recipes were written. There's an
yeah,
example I think of somebody I saw recently who found a very old, might have been 18th century actually, recipe for a cocktail that simply had a serve of vermouth, right? Undisclosed, undescribed, and you know as somebody's talking about this recipe that at the time that that recipe was created, there would have only been one vermouth that they were referencing, and everybody would have known it, and everybody that would have been what was available. That would have been, but and looking at the cocktail, you know also that it's going to be a sweet vermouth. But when somebody picks up a recipe and it simply says vermouth, one pour,
yeah,
and so they reach for what they have on the shelf, which happens to be Lillet Blanc, and you just know that there's no way that's going to
yeah.
work.
It's not
So
probably
there's
not
some
quite what they're
caution.
going for.
Yeah, no, not at all. So there's some caution to be applied with the old
Uh,
ancient recipe, but at the same
Absolutely,
time, for a curious and a culinary mind, so much to explore and so much to understand, which I think is part of what makes Panacea so interesting, because there's not necessarily the pressure of experimenting and creating on the floor per se, because it all happens prior to service. And so whether that pace is more conducive, yeah, I don't know. That's a question. It'll be a good question to ask Danny for when he rolls around.
absolutely. But I think me and him both have a very similar creative process in that these things just kind of sometimes come out of the blue while you tend
Hmm.
to be doing something else or just not thinking about anything.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've become aware of over the years, and it may or may not feel as concrete to you as it does to me, but one of the things I've become really aware of is when Ryan goes away. That Ryan goes away every year, that it's overseas somewhere. It completely, it feels often complete like you disconnect from the world and go off on an adventure somewhere, and then you come back and you keep rolling on and moving forward until the next time you go away and you travel. But the rhythm seems evident enough or clear enough or consistent enough that I perceive it even from a distance And so I'm curious to ask you what it is about that rhythm, whether it's a conscious commitment that you've made, but how is it that you keep that focus and what does it mean to you? And how does that shape more of who you are?
Well, it's a little bit of both. It is always around the same time of year, and usually for a whole month. And it was sort of comes out of an extension of my time living overseas. I actually picked up a hobby while I was over there. I joined a fencing club, and I
Mm-hmm.
got to know the team super duper well, and like a second family to me at this point. And so I make the conscious effort to go back for our sort of international gathering every year. They have people from Belgium, from Spain, from Italy, from the United States. I am the only person this far away, but I make the point of going all the way over, and then that is, I guess, kind of that's only sort of a weekend in a whole month, so that gives me an excuse to do all the other travel that I want to do.
Right. So that's
And
like the cornerstone. You build
that's
everything else
yeah,
from
that's
there.
like the that comes around at the same time every year, and I make the conscious effort to go, and then I've got all this other time to take as many things off my list as I can. All kinds of like I think at last count I had managed 23 countries,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I've always been fascinated by travel because my family has is extremely well traveled. Even when I was little, my dad had been all the way to Europe to do the same thing as me, and then come back and then spent time in the States. My grandfather was part of the Commonwealth Games rowing team in the 50s, and he went all the way to Canada at a time when that was not impossible but very difficult, and
Did
had
you
to
have to go
go
by boat?
he had to go partially by boat and partially by flying boat up through the
Mm.
islands. So that was just stories of family that traveled, and I guess that instilled in me this idea that I wanted to see as much of the world as possible, experience as many things as I can. So I travel like every year. I try to go to somewhere new. Like this year, I'm hoping to go to Belgrade and to Budapest, which is two places I've never been to, but have a friend who is from Hungary and raves about the Balkans.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just something that's always been in the back of my mind. And then I got very lucky when I was in high school. We did a school trip to Vietnam, which is a bit of a weird one because we were a Catholic school. So we were invited to go on a trip to study history there for 2 weeks, and we spent a year raising money to go. And then ever since then, it's been something I've been in love with forever. Like the more places I can see and the more things I can do, and then that also, like in a job like this, that more ideas for the bar and myself, and just maybe what I want to do in the future.
Mm. Some people collect postcards. Some people collect magnets, keychains, t-shirts. What is
Never
it that you
really,
collect?
I've never really collected anything. I think the biggest collection of things from my travels I have maps,
Mm-hmm.
like tourist maps from like museums and parks and like tourist attractions. There's something about them. I like they feel like I don't know. Is I'm not sure what it is about them that I really like.
It's a visual artifact of a place that you've been, right?
Yeah, and it's I don't know. It feels like maybe it's that thing from when you're a kid where like the map always shows you where the fun things are. Like
Mm. You talk about, obviously, there's the fencing component.
mhm.
How do you decide where you're going other than the fencing
Well,
piece?
usually because they're based in Europe, that means it sort of has to be within that kind of within sort of a reasonable distance of there. But usually it's either recommendations from friends. Last year I went to Scandinavia. I did Denmark and Sweden on the recommendation of a friend, and then this year it was I think I was reading a book actually that talked about Belgrade that made me want to go.
What was the book?
I'd have to find it. I read so many,
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
but it's just it would have been a book about. I remember what it was about. It was a book. It was a historical fiction set in the Crimean War, and that's I think why
Hmm.
that part of the world has been stuck in my head. But
Mm. Hmm. Well, and there's certainly still a lot of, shall we call it war? Shall we just call it difficulties? There's
yeah,
still plenty of
yes,
troubles in that part of the world right now. So I am interested to talk about the travel and how it relates to hospitality, because one of the pieces that strikes me is that when we travel, we experience hospitality almost all of the day and night. We are constantly, even if we're not explicitly aware, we're implicitly aware that we are in somebody else's home, in somebody else's territory, and therefore we're experiencing hospitality. How does your travel shape your ideas around hospitality and how it's expressed culturally and how it translates to then, as you say, where you work, there are a lot of travelers who come through the door. So how does it connect up? Is there a connect the dots? Does it join it up? Does it filter through?
yeah. I think it makes you very very aware that everyone does things differently, and it I try to be a bit more understanding of people who maybe, especially if they don't speak the best English, because I go to a lot of places where I don't speak the language at all. So the last thing I want to be is annoy anyone or make their life any more difficult. So it's being aware that like no one is trying to be difficult or trying to like make things harder. It's just everyone does things a bit differently. They might not understand, or you just may not understand what they're trying to get across, and that is definitely is felt, especially like here in Auckland, where we get people from so many places all over the world. As for like just yeah, I don't know. I try to make myself as least of a nuisance as possible when I'm traveling. I try to be as accommodating as possible.
Hmm. Are there specific stories or experiences that have shaped you when you've been overseas?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few like I mean, one of my favorite stories is I stayed at a hostel in Vienna, and it was just run by a husband and wife who were quite young. They were both right out of university, and he'd run a hostel as part of his university dorm. So, like, him
Wow.
and his friends needed somewhere to stay, so they rented a massive house, and then they ended up with too many rooms. So their solution was to rent the other rooms out to travelers as like
Ingenious.
as hostel dorms, and then when they finished university they wanted to continue that on, so they bought a smaller house with some really nice rooms, and it was only about 10 people to the whole place, I think, like not including I think one private room. And the weekend I was staying, they were going away, and they had her dad come over from Hungary actually to watch the place. So he was just and he was just one of the funniest people I've ever met. Like he brought 4 bottles of homemade spirit and just shared it with us all at dinner. And like aside from the obvious effects of drinking homemade liquor at midnight, it was just one of the coolest bits of hospitality I've ever seen. Like they had a family member come to look after their guests who then was comfortable enough to share something he had made and something he was very proud of,
Mm.
like with a bunch of strangers, and we all had a fantastic time. I think there was only 4 of us staying there at the time.
You bring home a passport stamp and it leaves an imprint in the book. But what leaves an imprint on you from the places that you've traveled?
It's a difficult one. It's not one I'd really thought about. But I don't know. I've noticed especially in the last few years, maybe because I've gotten a little bit older, that I find a real appreciation for like the arts that I never used to have, like
Mm.
finding places that do great music or visiting museums and sort of noticing things that I wouldn't have before, like how different places do have different styles of paintings than like how the architecture varies from city to city, even though you wouldn't maybe notice that when you're younger because you're just there for the fun of it.
Hmm.
I
Do you
think
find that in the drinks as well?
absolutely like it. I visited Prague a couple of years ago, and I was talking with a bartender at this really cool little hotel bar that's opposite the Opera House. And they have a really cool little menu that is based around Swan Lake. You go through it, and it's got these really cool like little stories that go with everything. And then I was talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, discussing creating cocktails," and I just started at Panacea. I was explaining how we do things, and he was like, "How can you do that?" I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" It's like it's you make things ahead of time, you make them shelf stable, and he's like, "Oh no, don't you get in trouble?" And like, because he wanted to batch his bar menu because he was from France originally and living in Prague, but the rules around like liquor in the country are so strict. They actually have to have a camera in their walk-in, and if anything is mixed, it has to be done on the bar. They're not allowed to mix it out of sight or put it still into the states. You're not allowed to marry bottles, and
Hmm.
he was just so fascinated by how we did things, and that he couldn't do it anything like that. And yeah, it was just a very interesting sort of difference in what like based one on like the culture of the city, and two what was even allowed within the law.
Mm. Do you notice any similarities as you travel so broadly between how people sit down for a drink at a bar, how they order, how they interact with strangers?
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of differences, and like different places do it differently. Some places you can't sit at the bar. Some places you're obviously that's the norm. And I think there actually end up being more similarities than differences in that regard. Like I went to a bar in Amsterdam, and their till system didn't work. And I'd only had a beer, but I was there for a whiskey, and the owner was like, "I'm really sorry, I can't do any more sales right now unless you have cash." And I was like, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I can leave my phone here while I go and get cash if you like." And he's like, "Oh, it's just a beer. Don't worry about it." And that sounds exactly like something that the 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 bar owners here would do if they
Hmm.
had the same trouble. And then that brought me back a couple nights later to have a whiskey properly and to chat to him again. And then he introduced me to the other hospitality who was sitting at the bar, and like that feels very much like more similar to what you'd get here than different, really.
Hmm. What's the best drink you've ever had while traveling?
Very
Experience
good
counts
question.
too.
The best drink I ever had was at a bar in London called Equal Parts, and it was less to do with the drink itself. It was a delicious sort of sun-dried tomato martini, but it was the fact that the place was really slow, and it was a bit of a quiet night because it was a Tuesday, and the bartender, when he found out I was a bartender, was just so excited to show off these things he was working on that he brought out all these little tasters of things and was just like, "Here, try this, try this." I think that was probably one of the best experiences I had in a bar anywhere. It was just his excitement and just love of what he was doing that made it so infectious, I guess.
Mm. Are you driven by flavor, ideas, or the overall experience of service in a bar when it comes to what you're looking for when you sit down to have a drink?
I look for the ideas. I look for something interesting. Like
Hmm.
if you go to some of the bigger places overseas, the service is always going to be great because it's just the level that they work at. But I try to look for things that are like a bit more unique, a bit different. Like I went to a place where they had a main menu and then three different secret menus, and you had to sort of work out like over the course of sitting there how to find them. And one was to use a black light on a keyboard to find the out how to access the QR code for the menu, which was a lot of fun.
The I'm always yeah, I'm just always interested and curious about the things that leave an impression, and it's interesting what you say about how, internationally, you're going to always receive a certain level of service because that's just the level that people operate at. It might be a slightly different expression, but it's going to
Yeah.
be the same level. Do you see any patterns emerging in New Zealand hospitality that are the same, where perhaps the level of service is actually really high, but it's the expression of that service that feels different? The slightly casual or the highly personalized approach. What stands out to you? Because you have the luxury of having, I think a lot of people travel, particularly people from our industry, when they travel overseas, they're often traveling with a hospitality first lens on, which means they're going to top 50 bars, they're going to tails bars, they're going to places where, they're looking to connect with the thing that is top of mind. You're going to all sorts of different corners of the globe, not necessarily driven by the same agenda. And yet, because of the nature of who you are and the fact that you like a good drink, regardless of whether you're working in the business or
Mhm.
not, you're looking for the same things. So you have this unique ability to provide a contrasting lens. So what do you see?
I think New Zealand is sort of very much trending the same way. Like we're very lucky and we have very high quality of service for the majority of like venues, especially the ones that get more recognition. And I think it helps that we have a very tight knit community as well, and that everyone kind of knows each other. And I think it's very sort of self selecting in terms of like bringing everybody up rather than sort of any one place shooting ahead of everybody
It,
else.
it's that good old Kiwi egalitarianism where it's not really tall poppy, it's just that we all have to succeed together.
Mm. Yeah.
That being said, you did recently succeed. The Lewisham
Yeah.
Awards, is, I think the best way to describe the Lewisham Awards is it's a huge bouquet of flowers from the hospitality community within which you work to say, thank you, we see you and we appreciate you. But tell me what it was like to pick up the gong this year.
It was a massive surprise. I felt very lucky to be nominated in the first place, and I like not as you said, not really being sort of the more gregarious side of hospitality. I thought that there was going to be like there are a few people up there who I think also really deserved it, and I genuinely thought it was going to go to one of them. So I was actually kind of stunned when they called my name out in the end.
And I mean, what is it? Does it give you a sense of validation of the path that you're on or what you've chosen? Does it sort of
Yeah,
lock you in?
yeah. It gives me a little bit of yeah, gives you that positive reinforcement that maybe we are doing the right thing, and like you don't need to stress so much and worry, which is nice.
Okay. What stresses you out? What worries you?
I I think it's just we have seen a lot of sort of our hospital brothers and sisters have not succeeded recently, and
Mm,
I think it's very scary for everyone because it's been places that have been really good, that have done a fantastic job, and it's obviously not solely down to whether or not you're good at what you do. There's a lot of external factors involved in all of that. So I don't know. I guess having that recognition is sort of a little bit of a confidence booster that things aren't quite as bleak as they could be.
excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, is that your observation from the top of O'Connell Street? Do you feel the impact of the hard times?
Yeah, I think everybody does. I think we're doing we're doing well because we it's not necessary the service is always going to be front and center for Danny, but behind the scenes he also runs it in a way that means that we can get by on the minimum. There's just the four of us. Things can tick along quite nicely, even if it is slow. But I mean, it's not necessarily the same for everybody, is it? Like, you've got you you run a restaurant, you can't really control the size of your staff on the night. You need certain people to do certain things, and yeah, I think you see it in like the number of closures recently, and right. But I think we'll persevere, and even those people who maybe didn't make it this time, once things are a little better, they'll take another crack at it. At least I hope so.
Mm-hmm. What's your drink of choice off the Panacea menu at the moment?
My favourite thing on the menu, which is sadly coming off for the next one, but it has been for a while, has been the Coglin's Law, which is our vintage Manhattan.
You're breaking my heart. I didn't know that was coming off the menu.
Unfortunately, the one of the problems with the vintage menu is that it requires on the supply of.
Yeah, it's hard to go back in time and say, hey, can we get a little more of that 73 vintage? Yeah.
Yeah, can you make a wee bit more for us?
Well, that's a drink that will go down in infamy. That's a great drink. That is a great drink. What do you reach for at the end of a shift?
Now that we have it, pretty much universally, I think we all go for a Guinness.
Yes, my next trip to Auckland is absolutely going to include a pint of Guinness at Panacea. Do you know, we had a casual pub dinner last night, but I still had some work to do. So I asked for a half pint of Guinness and I was refused. No, ma'am.
Oh.
No, ma'am. We only do whole pints of Guinness here. Now, I have two issues with that. One, where did the ma'am come from? But yeah. So full pint of Guinness, and the way he looked at me, it was like he thought I couldn't do it. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I was making a responsible choice, not like anyway.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Silly.
Whatever. Yeah, a Guinness at the end of the shift. That is pretty nice. Team has always seemed to be a very high priority of how Panacea runs. What's your experience been like as a member of that team? I mean, you were tapped on the shoulder by Cal and Danny, and so that's, that strikes me. I would consider that, a privilege. I'd consider that to be, it would feel like an honor.
Absolutely.
What's it like for you?
It's been great. Everyone has always been at quite a high level, and everyone, even though I never worked with the boys prior, I'd known them all for years, so it felt very comfortable stepping into that. And once we got used to working with one another and you work out everybody's quirks, it's been pretty smooth sailing for the most part. It's been fantastic.
As we will bring it into land, where do you see yourself headed in the hospitality space, and where else is left on the list of places to travel?
For travel, I really want to see more of sort of our neighbors, more of Southeast Asia, more of Australia, maybe parts of China and Japan, if the opportunity comes up. As for where I want to go in hospitality, it's still a little bit up in the air. I had thoughts of maybe opening my own place, but I would also love to work in whiskey, more deeply in whiskey, if I ever could.
Selling it, making it, drinking it?
I mean, all of the above, but more into the sort of production side. I would love to get to know more about that, and whether that was blending or distilling, or even the idea of working in a cooperage would be even if just for the experience to see how it's done.
And see, there it is. It always comes back around, I'm convinced, that somewhere in the first steps we make into independence and adulthood, there are threads there that always reemerge. Because as soon as you say, oh, well, the production side, what have you, there's the chemistry. There are the things that you were first pursuing that weren't necessarily, maybe it wasn't necessarily the right map to get to the place that you wanted to go, right? But the essential ingredients remain the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still, in spite of not pursuing it, I still find it all fascinating, and the more I learn, especially working side by side with PJ, like and doing my WSETs and it's just, I don't know, there's so much to look at and so many different ways of doing these things that I just want to know more and more about it the longer I do it.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps you're not so much an observer as you are a learner.
Yeah, maybe. I think that stands to reason. I mean, one of the reasons I love to travel is like I've always had a bit of an obsession with history and learning like where things come from, why things are the way they are, and
One of the questions I've taken to asking people recently, too, what's the tagline that you'd like beside your name in future when your friends describe you and they in a good old roundup years from now, they'll say Ryan Oliver, boom boom. What are they going to say?
what would I like them to say? I don't know. Quietly curious, I think, is what I'd like them to say. But I can also imagine many of them would not say such complimentary things, but they would mean it with love.
And what's the drink that you'll be drinking 10 years from now? When we sit down in a bar this side of the world, perhaps the other side of the world, maybe around the corner from a cooperage. What are we sitting down to drink?
I can't get away from a Manhattan. No matter where I go, like any version of a Manhattan. And failing that, a quick daiquiri is always the way to go.
That I was not expecting, but I'll take it. There we go.
That's Ali's influence more than anything.
And fresh juice, nothing batched in that quick daiquiri, nothing at all.
Not if you ain't drinking quick.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for just peeling back the curtain a little bit and letting us get to know you and some of what inspires you and drives you. It's been fascinating for me to learn more and to understand, and so I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tash. Thanks for having me on.